So we would like to just keep 2 to 3 minutes for them to join. So please just bear with us. Just 2 to 3 minutes for them to join us. We'll start shortly. Please kindly use the chat box. It's been opened for all participants to share their thoughts, to share their yes. When it is time for question and answer, for us to be able to track the questions, kindly use the Q&A box to ask your questions. But we want to chat, we want to share ideas, we want to show reactions to confirm that we are following the event. Please kindly use the chat box to send your comments. But when it is time for question and answer, kindly use the Q&A session. The Q&A box, so that we can track the questions and be able to give.
Hello, Lumide, are you there?
Yes, I am. You have the floor now.
Thank you very much. I couldn't hear anything. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And it's so nice to be with you all. And just like Olumide said, I'm looking forward to this power-packed, and I like to call it the eye-opening, the conversations that open the corporate governance. You know, when entrepreneurs hear about corporate governance, one of the things they usually look for is the bulky folders and all of that. But for today's episode, we'd like to flip the script a little, because we want to talk about how businesses can scale sustainably, attract capital, and the trust of their customers and innovators. So I'm looking forward to this session as much as you are. And I know that at the end of this session, we are going to be, build engines that power long-term growth, right? Because that's what we're all about. So I welcome you all, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to having a beautiful session with you also engaging. We look forward to your Q&As. But while I do my introduction, I also like to introduce our speaker today, because he's the energizer. I call him the energizer man, Mr. Segun Adaju. So he's the Chief Energizing Officer with the Consistent Energy Limited, and is an energy advisor, is an expert as a consultant, is an investor with extensive experience providing support in climate finance, policy, strategy, project management, market assessments across West Africa. He's a graduate of the University of Lagos, just like I am, and a holder of the BSc Economics and MBA degrees, with over 2 decades of banking experience in reputable financial institutions in Nigeria. Mr. Segun has also attended top-rated institutions, including Harvard, MIT Sloan School of Management, Frankfurt School of Management, Lagos Business School, and a host of others. Mr. Segun also provides expert and consulting services to several institutions cutting across the public and private and sectors, development agencies, such as, he was involved with the Rural Electrification Agency, the UNDP, World Bank, ADB, ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy, Ministry of Power, Bank of Industry, USAID, GIZ, European Union, and the list goes on, okay, because he has been in many sectors. But Mr. Segun was appointed by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning into the Technical Working Group for Power and Alternative Energy for the development of the Medium-Term National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 and Nigeria Agenda 2050. He also supported Lagos State government to set up the decentralized renewable energy desk funded by AFDB and supported Development Bank of Nigeria to develop the green finance strategy amongst other assignments. Mr. Segun was a pioneer president, Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, an interim coordinator, West Africa Renewable Energy Alliance. He has founded many SMEs, so we thought it fits that he'll be here today to discuss with us about SMEs and how they can scale and earn the trust of their investors as well. And he's done this in the last 15 years and sits on several boards. He's an advocate of corporate governance himself. Is the founder of Solar Direct NG, lead consultant, Soseda Consulting, Ojumo Agro Allied, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me the Chief Energizer himself. Thank you very much, Mr. Segun Adoju. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tola, and good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm almost tempted to say great akokite, but I think I just did.
I'll just reply. You said it already. Great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir.
Good morning once again, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. And a big thanks to the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria for inviting me. It's also a privilege to be a member of SCGN for a couple of years. And this actually happened after my experience with one or two startups that I founded. And also realizing that, look, corporate governance is very important and it's something I need to understand and learn. And then after a course from the Lagos Business School, so I just decided to join Society for Corporate Governance. And then, of course, I've benefited a whole lot. I don't know if the host can share my slide or you want me to do that so that we can just take it off from here. So I have a limited time and I want to be time conscious. So basically also to share my experience in the last couple of years, 15 to 18 years, and the benefit of corporate governance. Please, can you allow me to share my slide or you can share that for me? Okay, great. I think I have the right to share now. Please let me know when you can see my slide. And then we can roll. Please, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome.
We'll prefer it.
Yeah, it's in slide mode already.
It's okay, sir. It's okay, sir.
Okay, great. So thank you. Briefly, I'll just be sharing my thoughts on the topic beyond founders, building institutions, boards, and ethical cultures. Just like Dr. Tola said in the opener, at times when we hear board, we think it's, it's a very complex, institution or structure to put in place. And many organizations, particularly startups, I don't understand, the importance of board, how they should operate, how they should be set up, and who should also be members of for example, board of directors of an organization. Many times you see founders with maybe a friend or a family member. So you come aboard, I just need one or two people to fulfill our righteousness of, corporate structure and registration, right? But it's beyond that. So my presentation will just take, because of limited time, this outline, and I will quickly just run through. My openers. Founders start companies, but it's institutions that build nations, that enhances what we call sustainability. What does it mean? That means the organization living after its founder. And there are many instances that we can pick up, across the world, of organizations that were founded by a founder or a few founders with co-founders, and they are still existing. I mean, the BMWs, the Coca-Colas, right? Okay, so most time founders are the guys, let me use the word, who have the ideas, they have the vision. They just wake up and one light bulb says, I see the opportunity in this space. But in many instances, and also in my own a little experience, most time founders may not be the best people to run the organizations. This is, well, I mean, one takeaway that I want us to have. Many times, founders don't really have that patience, the calmness, and the skill to run, to grow, and to sustain organizations. I'm not saying all founders cannot, but some founders, don't have that leisure of doing that. And of course, I want to, acknowledge every founder in the house, including myself, including, some of my mentors that I see on the in the meeting this morning. But vision alone does not sustain a company. This is also one of those lessons that I've learned. A lot of people call me, serial entrepreneur, because I've started a few companies, and let me also be open. Some of them have failed. Some of the institutions that are founded failed, and I can tell you it's not too far away from corporate governance. Okay, and then so what builds legacies is actually the institutions, the systems we set up in an organization, and the values that we leave behind ourselves as founders. So why is this conversation this morning important? Number one, SMEs drive Nigeria. In fact, about 96.7% of all the businesses in Nigeria are MSMEs. That means the Dangotes, the MTNs, and the rest. I mean, they account for less than 4%, if I'm correct. Yes. I mean, all the big banks and the rest. So, and in terms of GDP, they produce almost half of the GDP of Nigeria. Okay, so you'll be wondering why half? It's also because of structure, right? And there are, records of startups failing between the first 5 years of their business incubation in Nigeria and also globally. In Nigeria, almost over 80% of them, not because they don't have money, or let me say they don't have good ideas. In Nigeria, I mean, there are a lot of opportunities if you have a very good idea. There are also funding opportunities. So it's not like probably funding also. It's not competition because the market is huge. If you structure properly, your customers will find you wherever you are. And you offer good services, but principally because they lack structure. All right, so because there's no structure, they are unable to separate themselves, the owner, from the company. They don't understand that the organization is a legal entity that should have its own life. So at times you find out the funding, the money of the company is the money of the founder. I mean, in quotes, right? And corporate governance is not really a luxury. That okay, let me wait until I'm 5 years. It's something we can start from day one. Okay, is necessary for survival and for scale and also sustainability. In my experience, I've seen opportunities of starting a company and then getting funding and getting investors because there's a structure. They can see your structure, can see your board composition, and even diversity. So, like I earlier mentioned, at times we have founders bringing their family members, their friends. And there's no diversity. There are no independent directors. So one of those that I've also learned over time is that in any company that wants to structure, they require who we call independent director or independent directors. These are directors who don't own part of the company, who can tell it as it is. But most times we just put all the you invested. You have money here. So, for example, my first experience in entrepreneurship, all the directors were shareholders. Okay, so they were not independent directors who could tell us And then when we had issues, of course, board politics came in, and there is no independent director that could say, look, this is what my own feeling is, because there are allegiance to, within the board, okay? Right, so how do we move from being a founder to an institution? Because it's very important. I do understand that there are stages, okay, of getting structure. For example, organizations, startups, entrepreneurs could start with advisors, okay, and then move to advisory boards, and then gradually, get to a stage where they have independent directors and properly structured. Okay, but the journey is one, you have a founder-led organization, and that's the era, who has the vision, who has what we call the hustle, who from the one is the CEO and also the driver and, the secretary. I found myself in such a similar situation in my little experience. They have control of the organization. They decide what goes on, maybe singularly. And, most times they have what I call the 5G. They have grit, okay? They have grind, what we call grind. One of those things they also have is, God in their direction. So they have great ideas, they have grit, they have grind, and then, of course, okay, so that's what we find out that most founders, and that's the journey. That's how it starts. Then we have an emerging institution where we have teams being built, functions being delegated, systems being created, and then to maturity where you have real corporate governance with all the several policies in place, diversity, the issue of inclusion, for example, how many, in this age, diversity and inclusion is very critical. For example, how many females do you have on your board? How many independent directors do you have? So there's always a tipping point in every business where the founder must move from being the engine to becoming a compass. So, stepping a little bit aback, if possible, even, maybe hiring a managing director or CEO and stepping aside and being a member of the board. Because most founders, they are serial entrepreneurs that have ideas and they want to just start many companies. One of those that I look up to, one of those models that early in my life that I look up to is a man called Richard Branson. I found that he started many companies and then hired CEOs to run those companies. So how do we build institutions? So we're talking about from, founding, being a founder to building institutions and also sustaining it. Number one is not just for us to register a company. So many people say, okay, I want to create structure. Maybe they've operated for a couple of years and they don't have CAC registration. So they believe strongly that, okay, to be structured is to register at CAC and have that certificate, right? But it goes beyond that. It's not just being a registered company. Institutions are self-sustaining entity. And as I speak, let's take a typical example of the first banks. I'm just using that as an example. There are also many other companies you can think of that has, defined governance structures. And then independent leadership. Like I mentioned, you separate the company from the founder, put controls in place, hire independent directors. I keep hammering on independent directors. It's very important. For example, if you have a board of 5 members, we have a founder, I have a 2 or 3 shareholders. Might be nice it is proper. It's very good to have one director who does not have any shareholding in the company. They're called independent directors. And most times they are tenure, you could have one for 5 years and bring in another, but there are people who independently and from afar, they can be real and tell a company where it's going right and what it needs to do. So the goal is to build what we call transferable, trustworthy, and transparent enterprises. When we step aside, time you have to step aside. Either you retire or you get retired or age comes in or the inevitable happens. What will happen to the organization we founded? And we've seen many instances where companies, very good, promising organizations, die with the founders. It's because there are no corporate governance structure that has been in place. So for me, why I begin to round up, because this is just a teaser for the panel session, who will drill down on the various aspects. For me, 3 pillars for transitioning beyond being a founder. And interestingly, it's also not far away from a very common terminology these days. We call it the ESG, where the G is governance. Okay. Number 1 is to have boards that think and act. Boards that think and act. So I've been in instances where as a director in an organization, things are not properly thought through, and the proper and right actions are not taken because of self-interest, and maybe because of alliances too. Okay, so maybe where independent directors come in, who can say, "Look, I think." Yeah, as an independent director, you are investors, you have ownership in the organization, the 2 or 3 of you directors. But being an independent director, this is my position. All right. I think things are not going right. I think we should take this step. Okay. So we need boards that think and act. They give strategic direction and guidance. They give oversight function. So, for example, we have various board committees, and they should be very effective. Audit board, compensation board. That's various committees that one needs to set up in an organization to provide oversight, and also risk management. For example, every organization, no matter how little you are, should have what we call a risk register. It itemize all the risks that can kill that organization and provide mitigants. So as startups and SMEs, anyway, please have a risk register. And Nigeria has a lot of risk that you need to think of. I mean, is it currency risk? Is it environmental risk? Is it regulatory? And then you plan properly for that. I advise all startups and SMEs that I also provide advisory services to tell this part. And then number 2 is to put in systems that will allow you to scale. So I've seen a lot of funding opportunities. Some of them are companies taking advantage of, benefited from, because there are systems in place. You have various policies, human resources handbook, whistleblowing policy, for example. So you might say, as a startup, why do you need this? Whistleblowing policy says, look, anybody in the organization, if finds out that anything's not going right, they have a line of sight of who they can reach out to, who they can call, maybe being anonymous, to say, look, something's not going right. And all staff of the organization, so for my organization, we have a whistleblowing policy, and every member of the organization, staff, have they understand what it means, that if the CEO and the founder, because of his the nature of he's always in a hurry to get things done. He might miss it. You have a right to take a call to this, or send an anonymous message to this line. And it's whistleblowing policy. Many organizations don't have that, but it's necessary. So to transition, you have systems that will provide you for scaling. So investors will not put money, very serious investors will not put money in your organizations if you don't have these internal controls. Financial transparency, where the CEO is not the one that's, an expense comes in and he's the one that brings the expense and approves. And just even pay. Some even don't have processes of who initiates, who recommends, does it get to a board at some level, some amount due? If it's, say, 5 million or thereabouts above, do you have to get a board committee member to sign off? And then there are no clear succession planning. I learned this from my experience, starting organizations, like I earlier mentioned, a couple of them failed because of what we're discussing. And I realized the importance of succession planning. So companies that I have the privilege of founding today, from day one, I have a plan that what happens if I'm not available, if I'm not around to do this? Who can do this? I begin to identify and begin to build the, competency. I go to conferences, take that person along, introduce to my network. Because as founders and serial entrepreneurs, another light bulb might come, in July or in August, and I want to go start another venture. So you need to have succession planning in place, even from the one. And then cultures and values are also very important. Cultures and values that are written down in policies. So we say, I feel, our values and our organization hold dear to heart. And initially it was like, okay, by word of mouth, everybody see, this is what I do, this is what I want us to do. But when put down in a policy and it forms the values and culture of an organization, then it endures. And then delivered by leadership, it allows this to permeate down the ladder. And I advise, please, if you have an organization, I want to recommend that you include, let there be inclusiveness, particularly gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming. I advise everybody should have a gender. There are some in my space. I'm into sustainability. I have companies and some around Greek, solar power, for example, and they're asking you. I mean, there are some investments that have female-led, are female-friendly, and gender-sensitive. And if you don't have, for example, female on your board, they say you don't qualify. I'm not saying everyone, but it's also, and then also, that gender also provides some level of balance. When we're in a hurry to run, some of them, calm us down and say, look, can't you look at it from this way? They can multitask. So it has a lot of advantages. So for me, those three pillars are interestingly environment, social, and also governance, particularly governance. So what's the role of corporate governance in startups? As I begin to round up, governance is not just for big corporations. It's not only for MTN. It's not only for EcoBank. Just bear with me, I'm mentioning names of organizations that just comes to mind. It's for ABC and Co. It's for Sociedad Consulting. It's for Consistent Energy, all right? And any other startup that you can think of. It is important. It gives you the opportunity to actually scale your business. So if you're seeing organizations raising, tons of, dollars, you're having a Bill Gates investing in your company. I have a friend who also is in the solar space. Of course, to have a Bill Gates invest in your company, must be clear that you are corporately governed and you have structure. And it is the discipline of sustainability, meaning if you want to run an organization that will outlive you, you find okay, so you start, you grow, and you scale, and then you sustain an organization. You must have corporate governance. It is a discipline of sustainability. And for SMEs, governance can improve your fundraising outcomes. I've seen that clearly, particularly in a Greek and solar space that I have, some ventures where you're able to raise funding because there's clear structure of who is your chairman. I mean, someone who also have that leverage, who has that clout, society just look, this person comes to the track record of many years, and it won't allow that to be tainted by an organization. I mean, so they also profile your directors, who's your, you know what I mean, all your board of directors, and know what strength they have. It builds investor and regulator confidence, particularly investors. Investors take more confidence in you if you have a structure in place that is clearly having oversight function on the company, and then it reduces founder fatigue. Okay, because leadership, you are bringing, founders, entrepreneurs can actually go through a whole lot of fatigue and stress. I mean, I've experienced that also in my little experience, where it looks like you are the only one that this whole weight is upon. But when you have others that can help you, that can lift that burden off your shoulder, it helps a whole lot. And then, there are other perspectives. Okay, so governance is inhibitor. So I advise startup separate governance very early enough in your company, life. Like I mentioned, a few organizations are part of that did not start early enough on this, of course. Let me just take some few examples. Let me start with Money Point. Interestingly, that's the last on the right, on my right-hand side. Is a Nigerian fintech. And interestingly, we're seeing a lot of this happening in the fintech. I just have 3 examples, and I just found most of, they're all on the fintech, just by coincidence. Okay, so Money Point is a Nigerian fintech company. So while I was in banking, we never imagined a day will come like this, where the likes of Money Point, OPay, have you used any car, what's called, what would you call them? Because okay, Uber and any other one you think of. And you want to pay the driver. There are almost like 2 or 3 companies they mentioned. Money Point, OPay, which other one? We never imagined a day will come that a fintech organization that does not have all the kind of structure, I'm a former banker, opening branches all over the whole place, brick and mortar, will just come and almost sweep the new generation banks or the first generation banks are out of the way. It is a result of a very robust corporate governance framework. All right. Of course, also there will be a few issues, but of course, once you have structure, you have procedure, and you have ways to address them, then you are able to come out of those challenges. You see, Flutterwave also, like any growing fintech company, that faced challenge at the time that even the CEO had to also step away. The company is currently working on reforms, and of course, putting in place transparent governance structure. So we're also saying, if we don't have that early enough, there could be challenges. I think the CEO step aside because of, and they're now enhancing their corporate governance. And then in an interview in 2020, the CEO of Andela admitted that the 1/3 of what they are doing, whatever, is fictitious. And then taking responsibility. It's only when you don't have corporate governance in place. I think the CEO has also handed over to the founder has handed over to a new CEO, and the institution is maturing. Okay, so these are typical examples of case studies that I want to, and you will notice that these organizations have raised tons of money. They have a very substantial market share. And they're also strengthening their board. Some ran into stormy waters in their life because they didn't have adequate corporate governance early enough that could, manage the risk. For example, how can 1/3 of the expenses, payments, and whatever be fictitious when you have a board in place where there are limits of approval, where the CEO has a limit of approval, and then it has to go to another level of the board for scrutiny and then recommendation and approval. My call to action to founders is, please start governance early. From day one, as you are conceptualizing your organization, also put boards and draw an organogram and put names in there. Don't forget independent directors, and also don't forget inclusion, gender mix. All right. Number 2, investors should demand and support board structures. And most investors these days, they do that. One of those things they look at is your corporate governance. Are you corporately governed? If you're not, I can't put my money here, because I can't guarantee that the CEO will not use it to divert it to something else. Then for policymakers, provide incentives for good governance. And I'm happy to also say, for Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria, please continue to do what you're doing, creating awareness. When I joined, corporate governance was not so much known and heard. But today, I'm pretty very happy that the society is doing very great things in terms of awareness and creation. So the future of Nigeria's economy depends not just on ideas, but how well those organizations and ideas govern. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any comments at any particular point in time. And then, of course, we have a very experienced panel, team that will do justice to this. Thank you so much. Over to you, moderator.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Shegun Adaju. That was a very insightful presentation. And I believe every participant will agree with me on that. before if you have any question, please, you can share the questions in the Q&A box. Okay, I think I have one. I think that the greatest problem for the S in the SME is finding directors that are willing to go extra mile in the journey with the founder. Finding a director, ED or NED or INED, who may be willing to make sacrifices with little financial reward at the moment is practically impossible for us in the SME. So this seems more like a comment, or I don't know if you would like to make, because I think it's is one of the big elements in the rooms when you are discussing with SME, and this issue of director remuneration, I think puts away a lot of SME to think like, I'm looking for funds. Where will I get capital or funds to be paying directors? What would you suggest be the best approach for this?
Okay, so thank you so much. I also share my own experience. Yes, compensation, it's something to also consider. But you also want to, get on the board of your organization, people who have interest in what you are doing. So, for example, my first venture was in microfinance, right? So having people who understand financial inclusion, poverty alleviation, was also, necessary. Today I'm in the, sustainability world. I run a solar energy company. So people also have that zeal to create energy, what we call energy access. So most times remuneration don't come. Interestingly, my organization, Concern Energy was incorporated in 2015. We started business in the year 2016. Interestingly, compensation in terms of sitting allowance and the rest started just 2 years ago in my company. So you really want to, people who they have experience, worth of experience, maybe they run organization, and their major focus is not what are you going to pay me? How much sitting allowance are you going to pay me? All right. I also sit on many boards where, even compensation on sitting allowance is donated to either charity. I say, please donate this to charity or reinvest it in your company. I'm fine. I just want to contribute and give back to. So in such not be board, that should not be. You also have to look for people who share your own passion, your vision, who understand what you're trying to do, right? But if I'm setting up a board and the first thing I'm asking is how much you're going to pay me for sitting allowance, that would be a sign for me that am I speaking to the right person? I'm not saying don't pay those. Of course you can, you should, but I believe those at the advisory level, at the board of directors, are the people who already come with wealth of experience. They run organization. I'm not saying money is not an issue for everyone, but money is not the most important thing. And really in life, money is not the most critical thing. What impact are you making? And this might be my advice. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, sir. That was very insightful. I think there are other questions. One from OKDG Isaac is that as an African, how can we integrate corporate governance into our system of education and even our communities? Because it seems corporate governance seems complex for young people coming up, coupled with struggles in starting business or businesses.
Okay, so
Did you get us, sir?
if I hear the question right, education. So, for example, okay, so how do we, maybe, I believe you're talking about curriculum in schools and the rest. In those days when I was doing in my secondary school, we used to do all this commerce. I don't know what they do nowadays in secondary schools, right? And they teach us trade and the rest. It's a very good way it's a good point to introduce corporate governance, when you're doing business studies and the rest. So begin to talk about corporate governance. In terms of our communities, Of course, you also say, there are laws and regulations that needs to be put in place. You should be able to know who is responsible for what. Authority is not concentrated in one person. A democratic setting where issues are debated properly and the decisions are taken in the ultimate interest of the organization, not personal interest. So that would be my own, and there are schools also to attend. I mean, Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria is there. Before I joined the organization SCGN, I went to Lagos Business School. There's a training on corporate governance that I attended, board structuring and the rest. And so it enhanced my interest in this subject matter. So you can also look out for training like this. You could contact the society and take part, specific particular training to enhance your skill in setting up boards. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, sir. There's quite a lot of questions here, but we may not be able to attend to all of them at this point. I think probably during the panel session, we believe that some of these questions will be attended to. But the last question before you go, sir. There's a question here from the participants stating that I just want you to, I believe many of the participants, some of them may be coming across a conversation around corporate governance and setting up a board for the first time. Someone is asking, what is the difference between management team and board? And the second question is it the directors that form the board or board must include outsiders? I think you may need to make that clarification.
Okay, so
did you get the question, sir?
Yes, I got the question, and I can even see it in the chat room. A board is the supervisory system and structure for an organization. It includes who we call directors, and directors can be executive and non-executive. So when we say non-executive, for example, at the time in banking, we used to have chairman, CEO in banking industry, and CBN came in. You cannot hold the position of a chairman and CEO at the same time. I mean, so it's preferably that a chairman should be a non-executive director. That means they don't involve in the day-to-day management of the organization. So the management team are the ones that run the organization on a daily basis. In a situation where you have a board of directors made up of 5, you might likely have 1 or 2 executive directors. What does it mean? Those directors are also involved. They are part of the management team. So they act as the link between the board and the management team. They are members of the board and also members of the management team. A managing director, when you hear managing director or executive director, that person holds that dual responsibility. So they ensure that what decisions, the visions, the strategies crafted at the board level are implemented on day-by-day basis in the organization. So management are the ones that run the company every day, resume to the office every day. The board does not, all of them don't have to resume to work every day, right? Maybe they meet quarterly, but having oversight functions. And then who forms the organization? So when you start a company, they're what we call shareholders. They're the ones that bring the capital, okay? My typical companies, today we have 5 directors. Let me use Concern Energy as an example. 3 of us, former bankers who have interest in energy, came together and said, let's set up this company. And then, so we are shareholders. And then we brought in 2 independent directors. One of them is our chairman, who does not hold shares in the company. And this is a person that we all respect. I mean, that's, we've worked with for many years. But he doesn't have shareholding in the company, all right? So when you're starting a company, you need to figure this out. And if you have not done that, you can do it while your company is incorporated, because those are incorporated, the company are the shareholders who in CAC are saying, what's your ownership structure? You see, it's 100%, 10 million units of shares shared among these 3 persons in this ratio. Okay, and then yes, outsiders, when you mean somebody who does not own shares in the company, is always very important. I mentioned the word independent director. it's good to have one or two independent directors. So we have two independent directors in my company. We have 5 directors on the board. 2 of those directors are executive directors. I'm one of the executive directors. And then we also have gender mix 40%, so 60-40. And we're hoping one day we'll have I move away, get a CEO who is female, and it becomes 60-40. I mean, this is my organization. It doesn't mean yours should be structured that way. So yes, outsiders in terms of people who don't own shares, they are called independent directors. Thank you. Over to you, Lumide.
Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate the insightful contributions, response to questions, and even the presentation. We appreciate you, and we hope that you will still be on the call. I'm sure at the end of the panel session, some questions may still come back to you. Okay, so like I mentioned, we may not be able to answer all the questions at this time. We'll be going right away to the panel discussion. I want to say thank you so much, but one of the things I want us to take note as we continue in this conversation, Dr. Shegun mentioned 3 pillars of transition beyond founders, and I think is very instructive. Number 1, board that thinks and acts, very important for a business, for an organization to turn beyond the founder and turn to an institution. You need a board, the board members that have the interest of the organization at heart, that have the duty of care, of taking care of the organization as theirs, and they believe in the survival of the organization. Then the system that scales, the system means that with or without you, the organization should be able to run. And the characteristics of that system must be that there must be an internal control, there must be financial transparency, and very important, there must be succession planning. When the CEO, how was the tenure of this CEO? How long should he or she stay? If he's leaving, what's the process of having another person in the pipeline? Then the culture that endures beyond the founder, beyond any individual, because every organization must have its own life that can run and live on its own life, on its own, with or without any person. So right about now, I'll be introducing the set of great people that will be steering the conversation forward. And the first person I'll be introducing is our moderator for today, is Dr. Ndukwa Ufuele. Dr. Ndukwa, can you please go to that slide? Apologies, please. Dr. Ndukwa is a visionary investment strategist and engineer. He leads discussions that drive innovation, funding, and collaboration across MSMEs and digital ecosystems. He is an accomplished Nigerian investment professional, entrepreneur, and engineer. He is the founder and CEO of Jodo Assets Management Limited, alongside JA. He also established and leads DX Africa, a multi-strategy exchange and advanced technology system aimed at supporting farmers and MSMEs. I can go on and on talking about his achievement with loud electronic clap innovation. Can we welcome Dr. Ndukwa? You are welcome, sir. I would like to introduce the second and the first panelist, which is Ms. Adewumi Zah, who is the founder and CEO of Zah Consulting Africa. You are welcome, madam. I also have Ms. Ijoma Adesoya, who will also be on the panel with her. And I would like to mention the third panelist, Bemini Shoda, unfortunately, is not able to make it this morning. It's something pressing that she was unavoidably absent for this event, and she sent an apology. She would have loved to be here, but Fortunately, situation beyond our control made it impossible for her to be here. But I'm very, very optimistic, and I'm persuaded that we are in good hands, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So I will be using Dr. Unduka to take the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Damola. You're doing a great job. Can you all hear me?
Not so loud, sir. Not so clear.
Okay, thank you, Damola. Thank you very much. You're doing a great job. Can you hear me?
Better now, better.
Okay, very good. My name is Dr. Unduka Ofulwe, and I run Jodo Asset Management. It's a multi-strategy asset management firm, and one of our key projects is the DICX Africa, which looks at sustainable food security and sustainable energy security, and how we can improve the energy security and food security situation in Nigeria. We've been running this project since 2022. It's a high impact, high caliber project with the presidency, state governments, and also ministries, department, and agencies. So it's a lot of work. And we hope that by next year we will start to scale, because we've done a lot of research work for the past 4 to 5 years on this exact project. And so I'll go straight to the bone of contention and why we are here. I know we have panelist Mrs. Adiola or Miss Adiolu with Zare Consulting, and we also have Miss Ijoma with Kobikam Africa. And I know our keynote speaker spoke very well about the challenges of micro, small, medium enterprise in Nigeria, and not just Nigeria, Africa as well. And one of the key takeaways we can remember from the presentation, 96.7% of all businesses fail. You know, that is a high number, high statistics. And there are 39.7 million micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria. That is about 40 million businesses, you know, give or take. And 80% of all the startups fail within the first 5 years, which is also a high statistics. We have a lot of failure rate from businesses. And one of the challenges, like Society of Corporate Governance has alluded to, is the failure of corporate governance structures. A lot of these businesses don't have the required and the appropriate and the rigorous corporate governance structures that can deal with a lot of the challenges you face in running a business in today's Nigeria. Nigeria is a very challenging business environment. We all know that. But without these challenges, you can be resilient. You know, I think resilience is one of the major critical factors for founders and CEOs to be able to build sustainable business in today's African Bank annual meetings, and here we are talking about resilience, building resilient businesses in Africa. And also taking place this week, we have the African Union Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Week as well.
Apologies for that. I think we lost the moderator. Okay, he's back. Dr. Unduka, can you hear us, please?
Nigeria. So I'll get on to the panel session. We have Adiolu here, Mr. Adiolu from Zare Consulting, and Ms. Ijoma from Kobikam Africa. Damola has done very their expertise to us, and their depth of
Olumide, are you still with us?
Apologies, dear participants, while we are waiting for Dr. Ondoka to join again. I think we just need. I think we just need to move
Olumide,
on
can you
because
hear
of
me?
time. I
Can you hear me?
want to welcome our dear panelists again. Mrs. Adewumiza, nice having you on the call. Mr. Adesonya, you're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Olumide,
Dr.
can you hear me?
Ondoka started giving us statistics about number of businesses failing in Nigeria, and I believe these statistics is not peculiar only to Nigeria. Maybe perhaps the number may be higher in this side of the world, but I think it's in any system that lacks proper system, failure is inevitable. So I would just like to start with Ms. Adeoluza. From your decade of experience,
unfortunately we face in Nigeria running a business, government of Nigeria and state government trying to improve the infrastructure.
Leaders across Africa.
Can you hear me?
What board governance models or practices have you seen work best for African businesses, and why would you think such model works?
I'm not sure if I caught your question, and I'm not sure if you're hearing me because I was trying to speak before.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, all right. Great. So could you repeat your question then? Because there are a couple people trying to speak at the same time.
Oh. Okay.
Olumide, could you repeat your question?
Doctor. Okay.
So I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. So I'll just go straight to the panel session. Like I said, we have Ms. Adeolu from Z Consulting and Ms. Ijoma from Kobikam Africa. And my first question will go to Ms. Adeolu. From your decades in corporate leadership across continents, what board governance models or practices have you seen work best for African businesses and why? So the first question is to Mr. Adeolu. From your decades in corporate leadership across continents, what board governance models or practices have you seen work best for African businesses and why? Can you just share some experience, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that question. And I think one thing, and welcome everyone again to today's session. I've seen some of the questions, and I see that there's a lot of interest and eagerness to do the right things. But yes, corporate governance can seem quite complex, especially when you're approaching it at the very beginning without much knowledge. So I would encourage, similar to what Dr. Shegun said about attending sessions like this, doing the necessary readings, and there's always tons of trainings around corporate governance. And to the question that was asked, so corporate governance is a topic globally. It's not a topic just in Nigeria. It's not a topic just in Africa. And issues with corporate governance also do happen globally. So what can we do and how can we tailor global best standards to our situation on the continent, specifically in Nigeria? That's what each company has to tackle for themselves. So there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really about, and it's also depends on where you are in your stage of growth. What is what the type of corporate governance standards that might be relevant for an MTN or for a Dangote won't be the same corporate governance standards that would be expected from a Money Point or an Indela, the examples that were touched on earlier. And it won't definitely won't be the same expectations we would have of a micro business from the M range of the schemes. So it's really about thinking about where you are as a company, where you are in that stage, and looking at 3 key areas. So first is really thinking about your mindset as a company and realizing, as was mentioned earlier, that you need to be proactive. The earlier you start in the whole corporate governance journey, the easier it will be to implement necessary structures and processes as you move along the journey. And it continues to be a journey. I use the word journey intentionally because it never ends. The next thing, number 2, is to really bring in diverse perspectives. This was also touched upon earlier in the presentation. And diverse is not just gender. It's also culture. It's also area of Nigeria. It's also upbringing. So you can have 2 people who are both Yoruba from Lagos, but come from completely different economic or backgrounds. And so bringing in these diverse perspectives will only increase the sustainability of your business. And then thirdly, and we touched upon that, and I'm sure we'll discuss it further, is that we're not expecting you to do everything at once. So you start lean, and we'll go into what that means, start lean, and then you build up from there. So again, thinking about the fact that, yes, corporate governance, there's a lot to do. There are global standards, there are best practices, but those need to be tailored first to the Nigerian context or whatever country you're based. Bring in the cultural perspective, making sure that's inclusive and making sure that it's fit to purpose, so fit to the size and growth stage of your business. I'll pause there.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you hit the nail on the wood. So we're gonna go to Ijoma. Miss Ijoma, you're the founder of Kobicom Africa. I mean, you know, from your experience, you're doing a great job in trying to scale. Your work with entrepreneurs across Nigeria has given you a bedside view of your struggles. I mean, you know a lot of struggles entrepreneurs are facing across the length and breadth of Africa. What are the common governance misconceptions you've observed among early stage founders, and how do you address them? So I think the question takes a look at the common governance misconceptions you've observed among early stage founders, and how do you address them from your own experience running Kobicom Africa?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I've been introduced. My name is Ijoma, and thank you, Dr. Shegun, for the keynote, and Ms. Adiolu for your response as well. So yeah, I used to work at Faith Foundation, and so that was where I really worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. And now in my role as the founder of Kobicom Africa, I get to work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well. But with while I was at Faith Foundation, we were training, capacity building, and helping founders to scale their businesses through funding. And for early stage founders, some of the misconceptions that we noticed when it comes to governance is believing that they have to be big to start. And I think Dr. Shego pointed on that as well. Or they have to have raised external funding for them to start with corporate governance. But when it comes to that, you know, it's not just about compliance or structure. For early stage businesses, especially, it's also about clarity. So understanding what it is that your organization is trying to achieve and where you expect to be in a couple of years, right? With your 1-year plan, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. It's also accountability within your structures, right? Within your organization, and it's sustainability. So it's not just about, you know, having to be big to start or having funding, external funding to start, but it's starting where you are with what you have. Another misconception that we noticed is around feeling like you have to have like board meetings or legal documents to prove that you have a corporate governance structure. But it's also about how you make decisions. It's about how decisions are made, who is involved in that process, and whether there's transparency in resources, human capital resources, financial resources. Ms. Adiolu spoke a bit about inclusion. So when it comes to your human capital resources, how are you managing that? Is there transparency in your hiring process, in your financials? Do you even have your books prepared? Do you have audited books? It doesn't even have to be audited for an early stage, but do you have books that are clear and anyone coming in can see the clear operations of your business? So my role with working with a lot of women-led businesses, you would find that even in the rural communities as well, they wouldn't have the exact structures that we're talking about, but whatever it is that you have, is putting certain, governance structures in place. It could be a family business, right? And there's a process as to decision making, who does what and who is responsible for what. That could be corporate governance in that sense. So in terms of the other part of the question, which is, I guess how we've addressed these misconceptions. One thing I would say is the goal is to demystify it by obviously training. So having a lot of conversation. So that's why this conversation we're having now is very important. There's so much you can learn from it. And breaking it down into practical, founder-friendly terms. So sometimes it seems like it's such a big thing that, it doesn't seem like where you are right now, you would be able to implement, but breaking it down into founder-friendly terms, decision rights, record keeping, checks and balances, even as simple as separating your personal accounts from your business accounts or documenting your key agreements. Also introducing tools like equity scorecards, those help when because at the early stages of your business, if you start to think about inclusion, you would be way ahead when it comes to investment and when your business is looking out to get grants, or especially in the social enterprise space, you're better equipped with scorecards and gender inclusion governance models within your framework that would allow you to scale. So I think generally it's just seeing corporate governance as a tool for growth, not a burden. And I think that will shift how you lead your organization. So when you see it as a tool for growth, it's easy for you to work on like the basic steps at the early stages before you build into maybe having an advisory board and then going into a full board of directors position. So yeah, thank you.
If I could add to that.
Okay,
Dr.
thank you, Ms.
So I just saw a comment that talked about demystifying, the whole idea of corporate governance. And Ijoma, I think you also mentioned that as well, like just simplifying the terms, because, corporate governance just seems like a big, scary, I don't know what that is. Do I have to have this massive board and I have to pay them 100,000 every month for sitting fees, etc.? And like you said, it's just a simple thing like, do you have a proper, do you manage your books? Do you manage your accounts? Do you separate the personal account from the company account? Do you have a transparent HR policy? I mean, these are very simple, but simpler to understand, and it's probably also our responsibility as experts to really simplify, instead of just calling everything corporate governance and not explaining what that means, but really breaking it down into sort of like a checklist as, okay, do you have these things, even at that early stage?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Adiolu and Ms. Ijoma Adesoya. Thank you so much. I think our keynote speakers really hit the nail on the wood in terms of the 3 pillars for transitioning beyond founders. One of the things the keynote speaker said was we need boards that think and act. Another thing he said was we need systems that scale. Another thing the keynote speaker said was we need cultures that endure time. And when you talk about sustainability, you're talking about time unbound, time that is not bounded by any specific geography or any specific region. You have to scale your products, scale your services within time. So my next question will go to Mr. Diolu. You advocate for ethical leadership and inclusion. How did you personally embed these values into your leadership style? And how did they shape organizational culture and performance as you've been walking through your many years of experience? As you advocate for ethical leadership and inclusion, how do you personally embed these values into your leadership style with your team? And how do they shape organizational culture and performance at your organization?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Dr. Nduka. And ethical leadership is something that that really hits close to home. I remember when I had my first child 11 plus years ago, and my then manager who was childless himself, but was very experienced, quite a bit older than I was at the time. And he had mentioned to me that when you become a parent, that it will impact your leadership style. That you becoming a parent will impact how you lead, and how you lead will impact how you parent. And I've really found that, I mean, it's been over a decade now, and I find that uh, the same way and the same values that I want to instill in my children, that's coming from somewhere. That's coming from my own values around, and so those values are the same values that I share with my team. And so there's really a lot of overlap between the two. So I can't be a different person in the office than I am at home. And so when we think about that, that's really around authenticity, leading with your whole self. And I know that that has become more of a topic in the last years, where it used to be that people had their sort of work persona, and then they had their non-work persona. But we're starting to realize that there really needs to be an overlap between the two, and it's actually the same person. We're not two different people. So I've been described as a sort of dichotomy. You hear my accent, but then you see the way that I think in terms of it being very organized. And then you hear what I'm passionate about, which is Africa and Nigeria. And some people say, oh, it doesn't match. But this is me bringing myself to the world. And we're not always going to be consistent. That's human nature. So, but being human in the way that we lead ourselves, but also being human in the way that we lead others. So understanding that just as we're human, others are human as well. So that's the first way that I would say about being ethical, and the way that ties into being ethical is because you're being honest, right? Being ethical talks about being honest. So being honest with yourself, being honest with others. And then the second one is transparency. So I'm one of those leaders who errs on the side of transparency. I'd rather share too much and make sure that everyone understands why we're doing things, where we're headed, even around financials, etc. It's something I do with my team, even my small team that I have today after I left the corporate world, is we try on a quarterly basis to really share where we are as a business with the entire team, so that everyone understands the financial decisions that we're making, why we have to say no to many things, because and why we have to push on other areas, because everyone understands where we are as a business. And so that currency of trust that you build within your team, because there was always the argument: is trust given, or is it proven? And I'd rather give trust, and it's up to the other person to give me a reason not to trust them anymore. And then the third, and I'll close with this one, is again, I'll go to diversity and the power of collaboration. So really thinking about I've had a certain lived experience, right? And so because of that lived experience, I think a certain way. And so I will see things right and wrong, uh, and morality against my lived experience, but it doesn't mean that I'm always in the right. And so bringing others into the team who maybe have a different perspective, and who also have that, giving them that openness to be able to express that perspective, so that it also strengthens and broadens my leadership of the team. So if I could just summarize that, authenticity, leading with your whole self, and then building a culture of trust and transparency, and then thirdly, collaborating together as a leader. For me, those are the 3 areas I focus on as an ethical leader.
Thank you, Ms. Adeomizer. I think you really said it all. I think the challenges we face across industries and across, all small, medium enterprises are pretty much similar. We in Abuja here, we have a lot of small, medium enterprises that are facing very similar challenges with what you're talking about. And, looking at how they scale, and also the challenges, the challenges of funding and structure. And I think, like you said, most of these things has to be done sustainably over time. So my next question will go to Ms. Ijoma Desonya. You manage a 1.3 million euro fund for pre-incubation entrepreneurs. How did the governance or the lack of it affect grantees in how they were selected, managed, and succeeded when you were managing your 1.3 million euro fund for incubation entrepreneurs? I understand you had some governance structures or the lack of it. How did they affect the grantees, how they were selected, managed, and how they succeeded on that project?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So managing the fund, one thing that we observed from selection process to disbursing of the loans was that corporate governance plays a very big role, right? It was very clear from the onset the difference between people who had some form of structure, and bear in mind that it was pre-incubation. So some people were at the stage where they were still conceptualizing their idea, right? So they had a prototype of a product or something, and they were looking to see how far it could go. So a lot of the businesses weren't very structured. But then with the basic things, and that's why, even Ms. Adiolu highlighted as well, the importance of, just breaking down governance to, just the basic things that we know to do in our business. So we noticed firsthand that the organizations who were a bit more structured were able to pay back the loans at the time. So they were giving both grants and loans. And we saw that it was easy to track as well and monitor their progress. Whereas ones who didn't have that much structure and clarity and foresight were struggling to even provide reports on the loans and the grants that they had been given in terms of what they used it for and things like that. So we weren't looking when we were selecting at just great ideas. We're looking at whether the entrepreneurs had basic governance structures. And that was as simple as clear leadership roles, financial controls, and reporting processes. So with clear leadership roles, there were some caveats to, receiving a grant, right, and a loan from this establishment. And one of them was the fact that you had to be sole owner of the business. And we found that a lot of entrepreneurs don't really pay attention to their CAC documents. For whatever reason, they just put different people on. And when you now get to a point where you're receiving funding, you now struggle with those people having access to that fund as well. Because as long as they're part of that documentation showing that they're part owners, then they would have access to the fund. And so one of the things that disqualified a lot of people was that, they didn't have full control of the business, right? So just even putting together from the registration of your business, that's where corporate governance starts. It doesn't start when your business is big and large, it starts when you're registering your business. It's like, who do you want to be in charge? Who are the key players in this space? What are your reasons for even having them on your documentation as directors, right? Because we found that some people actually had to drop off from the program because they were having issues with their co-founders, right? And so corporate governance or governance starts there. So founders who had treated their governance as non-essential, so it was just, oh, I'm just starting out, I'm a small business. To be honest, we talk about small businesses and SMEs a lot, but a lot of our businesses are in the nano and micro stage, right? And so we find that they struggled with meeting the grant conditions, the ones who didn't focus on corporate governance. So the grant conditions, managing the dynamism of their teams, and then scaling responsibly as well. You'll find that people would receive grant funding or loans, and they would use them to sort of enhance their lifestyle in a way, maybe buy new laptops or, move into a better space, as opposed to putting it into the equipment and the tools that they need to grow and scale their businesses. And so this is where corporate governance comes in. It starts in the little, it starts in your financial control, it starts in your clear leadership roles. It starts in your decision-making, how you make decisions, clarity on that. When you have a co-founder, who is taking responsibility for what? How are decisions being made, right? We also noticed, or one of the things that I noticed as well, is being able to communicate transparently. When you have systems and structures in place, you're able to communicate transparently. We found that the founders who had governance to a degree was able to submit their reports on time and adapt to challenges quickly as well. So those things are really important, and I feel like we talk about it, and when we talk about corporate governance, everybody's thinking about boards and things like that, but it's even in the little things, and those things now affect even how you are able to raise funding for your business. When you're raising your business, you're starting from ground zero. Start imagining that you're receiving funds from the get-go. And this is where, those structures come in. One thing that we did to help with this was a lot of training and coaching. So giving them, financial templates, basic financial templates, to be able to even have a foresight of, because when you have a foresight of your financials, I feel like you're able to see where you're bleeding and where you're strong, and then be able to scale sustainably from there. You also see that decision-making frameworks, if you have your decision-making frameworks in place, how decisions are made, it allows you to be quicker with your decision-making. And then, with the right accountability mechanisms as well. So even if you don't have a board, you can have an advisory board. And how do you choose an advisory board? A lot of times people choose board members who are really busy because they are maybe top in the industry or whatever the case may be, or maybe you like their faces or whatever. But when you're choosing a board, it should be based on what you need within your organization. What are the gaps that you've identified? And with those gaps, who are the people that can support you on that journey? And one thing that is important to note is that they must be available to you. They must be available to you in the sense that, fine, even if it's a quarterly meeting, they're available for those quarterly meetings. You don't want to choose someone who is too busy, is exceptionally doing exceptionally well, or is a minister or something of the industry that you're in, but cannot give you that attention that you need at the early stages. Especially, you need people who can help you at every stage that you're in, sort of handhold you in an advisory structure before you move into a board position. So those were some of the things that we did. So we went through coaching, help them with templates and frameworks that would help them structure their businesses forward as a foundation to corporate governance. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ijoma Desonya. I think you really said it all. One of the things you said was corporate governance starts not just, when the business is started, but when you're registering the business, which is very critical. And also you highlighted one critical issue within startups, where there are issues with the founder and the co-founder, because the founder obviously is the visionary idea person who brought about the idea and conceptualized the idea. And many times when you have co-founders who have a different idea or a different trajectory in their idea, it can distort the vision of the founder or the co-founder or even of the employees who come on board. And I know women play a critical part in all of this. So my next question will be to Ijoma. Let's stay with you here. With your background in advocacy and women leadership, how do you think inclusive governance, especially gender diverse boards, shape startup culture and sustainability? In terms of your background in advocacy and women leadership, how do you think inclusive governance, especially gender diverse boards, shape startup culture and sustainability? This is for Ijoma.
Okay, thank you for that question. So I think first of all, it's not just diversity for show. So a lot of times people talk a lot about diversity, but it's not just about ticking boxes. It's actively shaping how startups think, how they lead, and how they grow. The second point I wanted to make is that diverse boards drive better decisions. And the truth about it is that, you know, with everything that we do, no matter the industry, no matter the sector, if you have more men on boards than women, for example, you're going to have a lot of blind spots, right? There are going to be a lot of blind spots because there are certain things that are peculiar to the different sexes that might not be addressed in the organization. And so what it does is that it also encourages healthy debates, and then it improves risk management as well. Another point is that women also bring a lot of market insights and empathy. And you see this especially in emerging markets, right? There's a lot of experiences that women face, but just understanding, you know, the underserved markets, that is where empathy comes in. The informal sectors, the community needs. There are lots of times where, you know, if we look at the informal sector, you would see that there's a lot of unpaid labor for women who are doing everything else with raising a family, taking care of the home, doing everything, but still showing up at work fully. And so that's where empathy comes in. You need a diverse board. You need women on boards to be able to have that other side to it as well, and market insights. And when I say market insights, it's something as simple as women are maybe the ones going to the market or going to, you know, buying groceries. So they have an idea of, you know, how things are increasing, how things are moving. And so that really plays a key role, right? Market insights and empathy. And I would say that culture starts at the top. And so if you want an inclusive organization, you need to have an inclusive board, right? You need your governance to be inclusive because it cascades into your hiring practices, your leadership styles, and how your customers and teams are treated. So how your organization runs starts from the top, right? The tone at the top is very important. And if the tone at the top is inclusion and the culture at the top is inclusion, then that would cascade down into every aspect of your organization. I also think that it has an investment appeal. Now more than ever, you see a lot of investors asking about gender inclusion, asking about diversity, asking about, you know, just the difference, because when we talk about inclusion, there are so many facets to it. It's not just gender, but you see more investors appealing towards or moving towards organizations who are showing and proving that they have an inclusive team. They've seen how much it is, how good it is for business, and so they are also pushing for that. But in general, it builds inclusion builds trust and signals long-term thinking as well, because that's where the world is moving to. One more point in terms of that is social responsibility and sustainability, especially in the African context. Businesses are often nation builders. And so it's very important that nation building is diverse, right? And so with diverse boards, we have better profits, we have better GDP globally, especially in Nigeria as well. And we're better able to balance the profits with purpose and community impact. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ijoma Adesanya. With diverse boards, we have better profits, better visibility, better scalability, you know, better businesses that cater to humanity's needs. Thank you so much for that. So we'll go back to Ms. Adeolu Adeomi. As someone who led Alliance Nigeria through a profitable transformation, what role did governance structure play in building trust with stakeholders and achieving that turnaround? We know you are with Alliance Nigeria through a profitable transformation, and we know you played a critical role in that. So can you tell us what role governance structure played in building trust with stakeholders and adhering and achieving that turnaround at Alliance Nigeria?
Okay, thanks for that question, Dr. Nduka. So my journey at Alliance Nigeria actually started from as an investor, and then moving to a non-executive board role, and then taking over an executive role as CEO. So I went through the whole corporate governance journey. And so as an investor, so I was leading mergers and acquisitions for Allianz across Africa. And we were looking to invest in Nigeria, and we had looked at a number of insurance companies in Nigeria. And why did we choose Insure, which was the name of the company at the time, which was the old Union Bank business. And the reason that we chose them, they were quite small. They weren't the largest in the market by far. An ICO or Leadway would have been a more natural choice for a company the size of Allianz, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the world. But we wanted a clean book. That's what it came to. We said that we go for the company that has the cleanest book, the strongest team, and that was the two criteria that we looked at, and we rated all the companies across that. And so the reason that we invested in the company in the small business that became Allianz Nigeria is that they had the cleanest book. So as a global strategic investor, that's how we came into the country. And then I stepped in as a non-exec on the board, and so I was also the team and the regional and global team, which of course you can imagine is a transition, right? Because there are certain governance standards that Allianz as a global player wanted to bring into every single one of the subsidiaries, which may or may not have been as easily acceptable in each of those local markets, Nigeria being one of them. And so part of my role, or one main part of my role when I was brought in as CEO was exactly that, to make sure that Allianz Nigeria was just as up to standards and meeting the same standards that we saw in Germany. So that was taking the company then on a journey where they'd been used to local decision making, having a local 100% local board, and then having to have decision-making shift to the Africa level or even the global level, having board members come in who are non-Nigerian, who are non-African. And as you can imagine, that was a journey in itself. And so what I want to say with all that is that, one, governance attracts investment. So you might say as a small company that, oh, I'm too small. I'm focused on getting funding, and Ijeoma talked about that as well, whether it's external funding, whether it's financial funding or grants, etc. Investors are looking at how well your business is run. That will be the top criteria. Secondly, in terms of even just operational excellence. So when in my role as a non-exec and having to help the company transition from locally run processes, local decision making, and moving to the operational standards and the operational excellence that was being seen across the world. Nigeria was not expected to be any different. I've heard many times since I've moved back home that this is Nigeria. Yes, Nigeria is one country out of 200. We're not that special. And I think working with a global entity, you see that we have to meet the same standards that any other country is expected to meet. And then the third part is around around building trust. So bringing me in as the CEO who had been part of Allianz for almost a decade at that point, but was also a Nigerian, was around bridging that trust. So knowing that this was someone who knew the standards and the processes and the transparency that were expected, but also being able to balance that with the knowledge of the local culture and local expectations was a key part of my role. So if I could just wrap that up, to achieve sustainable growth, which I believe is what we all want at the end. And I saw a comment that was talking about separating ownership and profit versus building and nurturing and serving our businesses. So for those of us who are looking to build and to sustain and to serve our businesses, meaning that we want to build sustainable businesses that will outlast us, maybe even outlast our children, then it does mean that we have to recognize that governance is not just an add-on. We're hearing the same messaging from all the speakers here, that the governance is not just a checkbox exercise. It's not just it's not just about having some kind of heavy hitting board, but really it has to be a core pillar of your strategy and will be the piece that allows you to attract investment, attract the right executives, attract the right folks at the board level so that we can really scale that business to the same stage and the same excellence that we see around the world. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Diolu, thank you so much. I think you really went in depth on that question there. So let me ask you again, since we're with you. Through your consultancy, you advised growing African enterprises. What are some of the early warning signs that you've seen for lack of corporate governance, holding back businesses from scaling? So I know you've been doing a lot of consultancy work and you advise a lot of growing enterprises. What are some of the early warning signs you've seen due to lack of corporate governance structure that are holding back businesses from scaling?
Yeah, I love that question because clearly the last 2 years, and it was mentioned before by Dr. Shagun, 80% of businesses fail, at least that. I think it might even be more in the first 5 years. And some of those failures can be observed already at the beginning. So for me, there are 3 warning signs. The first is around the founder and really the type of founder. So I'm not talking about age, I'm not talking about gender, I'm not talking about upbringing or culture, etc. But really, again, back to mindset. So is the founder open to correction, to feedback, to doing the right thing, and to learning how to do the right thing? So knowing that they don't know everything. So, or is the founder set in their ways and looking to perhaps use the business to benefit themselves, or even if they have the best interest of the business at heart, have the feeling that their way is the only way. So for me, the founder, whether it's as an investor or as a potential client, the first thing I do is to look at the type of founder and what kind of mindset that founder has. Then the second thing I look at are warning sign is the financials. And it doesn't mean that I expect audited financials from year one. We're in our 2nd year of operations, and we're actually just going through the auditing process ourselves for the first time, trying to close at the month end to meet local standards. And it's so that's because I'm coming in already with that corporate knowledge, that corporate background. But it's not that we're expecting, I'm expecting that in your first year of operation, you already have audited financials, you have a finance manager, you're publishing management reports or submitted management reports every month. But it is understanding, again, to my previous point, that your personal finances and your company finances are two separate entities. And your company shouldn't be seen as a piggy bank for your personal life. So for me, that's the second warning sign. And then the third warning sign is really around the kind of people that the leader has on board, that the founder has on board, because they say that you attract, like attracts like, right? So if I see the type of people that are in the company, whether the way that they interact with each other, the way that they behave with each other, what kind of culture is being built in that company. Culture starts from the top, as Ijeoma had mentioned. And so it's then really easy to understand what kind of leader is in place. Even if they were able to fool you, you can see it from their people. So if I just summarize, it's then around the founder and specifically around the kind of mindsets that a founder has, is around how well the books are kept. So again, not expecting audited financials from year one, but just seeing a proper separation and understanding between personal finances and company financials. And then 3, what kind of people do they have on their team? So I'll pause there. Dr. Nduka, over to you.
Can you hear me? Good, good. I can hear you. You said it very well. You said people drive strategy, strategy drives performance, performance drives financials, financials drives profitability. And you said it all. It's about the kind of founder and the mindset of the founder, which is very critical when it comes to organizations and micro, small, medium enterprises. You know, a new generation of Nigerians are up and coming, you know, graduates from universities who have a different mindset when it comes to running a business. And we've seen some of them build successful businesses like Damola alluded to, you know, Money Point and even InterSwitch and various other organizations. And also you've seen so many failures. We've seen so many failures in the micro, small, medium enterprises. But we know the mindset of a founder is a critical factor when it comes to building and scaling up businesses. You know, we need founders who are resilient, who can go through thick and thin, through tough times, and which is what finding a business is all about. So let me jump to Miss Ijeoma Adesonya. Founders often wait.
Sorry, I wanted to point out, I think we need to go to Q&A because of the time. I think there's a message in the chat. So we have some questions there. I don't know if we do that.
I think we should do that. Okay, Damola, over to you. Can you share some light on the questions on the Q&A session there?
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nduka. Thank you so much, dear panelists. We have quite a few questions here. I will do my best to just pick quite a few because of the time. Where should we start from? Okay, let's start with this. It says, what specific actions can leadership take to embed ethics into the company DNA? This is especially for companies where you have old ends that have been in the system while we try to introduce changes on one hand, and you find a founding partner indirectly encouraging compliance violations for lack of corporate will, strength, and energy needed to instill discipline. Did you get that, sir? So the question basically is talking about how do you instill corporate, what's the strategy you think a leader can take to embed ethics in the company's DNA, especially where we have founding partners, people that have stayed in the organization for long, not willing to change or not willing to comply with ethics. What would you suggest be the best strategy?
Ijeoma, I would suggest you take that one since you were supposed to take the...
Okay, so I think this is why I was speaking to the tone at the top. And to be fair, if the tone at the top, ethics is not a priority, then you're going to see that reflected in everything. So if based on the question, the person at the top also doesn't, isn't particular about, putting in the right ethics, I think it has to start with that. Sorry, can you maybe repeat the question again, or let me just find it in the chat actually.
Okay, so just to summarize it, you want to bring up about a change. How do you embed ethics into a company's DNA, where most people are not willing, especially the leaders or the founding partners or people that stayed in the organization, they are willing to instill the discipline or to embrace the ethics that you are bringing in?
So it depends on the person trying to enforce it. At what level are they on? Because that determines how it will be received as well. Sorry, there's an echo. Okay, yeah. Now I was saying that it depends on the level that the person trying to instill this ethics is. If you are in the HR, it might be a good idea to put in certain performance frameworks that are tied around that ethics. It's also important to have periodic meetings or I don't know, training sessions to just educate people about the importance of ethics and the culture of the organization. So I think that constantly training and encouraging and reminding people through, I don't know, town hall meetings or, sending out the values of the organization as HR, I think that would be the best approach to take. Because from the example given, the tone at the top is already not for ethics, so it doesn't fully focus on it. And the people there have been there for a long time. But it's also looking at ways of recruiting new people. I didn't want to say that because that would sound like I'm saying, okay, fire everyone on that level. But I think, working through the HR to push in the right values into the organization.
Awesome. I don't know if Ms. Adewumiza wants to make any contribution on that, or we should go to the next question.
I would suggest, given the number of questions, we move on to the next one.
It's all right. So another question says that, please, I want to ask, how do you advise on the necessity of a corporate governance structure in a company, specifically real estate company, that view you as their legal advisor? They run a one-man structure where the director is the owner of the company. Sorry, you are muted.
No, I just got cut off. So we're asking the last question, right? How do you advise on necessity? Okay.
So this person wants to know, how do you advise our organization about the necessity of corporate governance structure? And this company in particular, this person is their legal advisor. However, the company runs as a one-man structure where the director is the owner of the company. What approach would you advise that this person employ?
So it's a little bit difficult without getting more context. But what I can say, or what I could advise the person to start with, is some of the information we provided today. That it's really starting with the small things, but don't think of it as small as in unimportant, but small as in it's should take less effort to implement some of those initial areas. Just as simple as Ijeoma has said before, as is the business registered? Is your CAC in order? Do you have the right people listed on the CAC? How are you running your financials? How transparent are your people policies and other operational policies? Do you have, and I see that you are the legal advisor, so they have a legal advisor, so at least they've done that. So that's a necessary first step, because again, most of us don't know what we don't know. So indeed, the first thing I did when after incorporating my business was to bring in legal advisors, because I couldn't begin to know and understand all the regulations that I might have to fulfill, particularly around tax in Nigeria. So it's really just starting on that bit by bit approach, rather than coming with the whole big sort of scary picture of corporate governance and boards and all those initial topics that people think when they hear the term corporate governance. So I hope, Damaris, that provides some context.
All right, thank you so much, Ma. I really wish we have so much time to attend to all these questions. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. I don't know if Ms. Ijoma has time for just one more last question before we go. And so, dear participants, if your question is not being answered, please just bear with us. You can please send us an email, and we'll ensure that all these questions get to panelists. So the last question I want to throw to Ms. Ijoma is, what would you say most nano and micro enterprise are business name? And this person wants to know, how do you then set up a corporate governance for such an enterprise? For instance, this person asks that, what governance structure should the owner of a business name, e.g., the one that sells the sheet, adopt to ensure transparency and sustainability?
So I heard the first part of the question, but not the second part. So for the first part is you have a business, you're registered as a business name. That doesn't change structures within your organization. When I was speaking to being the head or the majority owner of your organization, I was speaking to receiving loans and grants, right, and funding. But when it's a business name organization, you can start with basic bookkeeping. You can start with having periodic meetings with your team, monthly, for example, or weekly. You can start with how decisions are being made. So for the different departments, who is doing what, how are decisions being made, who reports to who, what is the organizational structure of the company, what are the code of conducts of the company, what are the HR policies around recruitment and how you recruit, what is the culture of the organization, what kind of people are you looking to hire. So those simple things, well, as Ms. Adeolu said, not simple, but those things that are easier to, low-hanging fruits, for example, those are things that you can start with. Because your business name doesn't mean that you can't put in structure. If it's a business name, then there's no issue with who owns what or the ownership levels of your organization. So you can just move towards putting in the right structures in terms of your finances, your culture, and your decision-making as well. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I really feel like we should extend this to like a 4-hour conversation where we delve into a deeper conversation. Unfortunately, dear panelists and everyone has a lot of things to do for the day. And we want to say thank you for taking out time out of your busy schedule to come on this event to share your experience. From your wealth of knowledge and experience, I think I'll be speaking on behalf of the participants. It's been a very enlightening and well insightful session. I want to say thank you to all our speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Right about now, we're supposed to end this corner, so I would just want to crave your indulgence for the next 5 minutes to run you through what we do at Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria. Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria is a not-for-profit organization, and what we do is to advocate for best practices and business ethics, and we've been doing this for 20 years. This year makes it 20 years where we've been advocating for best practices and business ethics. And our services include board evaluation exercise, as we've talked about today. Part of the things to make your board effective is to conduct evaluation, and has been stipulated and recommended by NCCG 2018, it recommends that board does a board evaluation every year, and we help organizations to carry this out. We conduct a board enhancement program, in-house kind of a bespoke training for your board. There is need for continuous development. Excuse me, for your board. We do board training, board governance advisory, corporate governance audit. We help organizations to recruit board recruitment services. We conduct board policy documents and review and development in such a way that probably, as we've discussed today, you discover that there are some policies that are not in place. We can help you to develop such policies and set up your corporate governance operations and help your business to run in a standard way. We also help in creating corporate governance advocacy, such as what we are having for best practices, and this is specifically for startups and SMEs. We have other events through which we advocate for best practices for women inclusions, corporate governance conference where we discuss front burner issues and the likes in corporate governance. Slide. So, and also Society for Corporate Governance is a member-based organization where we have members who drive conversation, who drive policies in their various organizations. And this membership is an avenue for everyone who is a member to network, is an opportunity to project our members to, is an opportunity to network with business leaders and associate with people that are driving best practices in their various walks of life. We have some international programs coming up. We have one in Switzerland coming up next month, and we would love that you are part of it. $500, and if you are interested, we want you to join us. Just send us an email to olaleye@corpgovnigeria.org or call the number on the screen. We would love you that you join us. We also have another one coming up in the UK later in the year. That's in November 11th to 14th. We want you to join us also. That is just £3,500 to participate in the program. We have other events. We would love that you follow us on our social media for our upcoming events, or you visit our website. If you have any other inquiries, any other information you require, you can send us email. We'll be willing to respond to all your questions. Thank you so much for joining us for this event. I want to believe that it's been a well spent 2 hours. We want to say thank you for giving us your 2 hours this morning. Until we come your way again, we want to say keep winning, and we believe that with this conversation, we are trusting that your business will outlive you, and what we have today as a family business will become an institution, such as we have under of this world. That will be the case of your own organization. So we want to say thank you for joining us. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.